Chair, I can confirm you're live on YouTube.
Thank you for attending today's meeting of the Kings Lynn Area Committee. The Democratic Services Officer will now conduct a roll call to check who is present at the meeting. When she calls out your name, could you please switch your microphone on and confirm your attendance by answering present?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Bone.
Present.
Councillor Collop. Present. Councillor Colwell.
Present.
Councillor Everett.
Present.
We have Councillor Fry, understanding order 34 on Teams.
Present.
Councillor Hennigan.
Present.
Councillor Jones.
Christmas present.
Councillor Joyce. We have Councillor Kemp, understanding order 34 on Teams.
Present.
We have apologies from Councillor Lowe. Councillor Moore on Teams, understanding order 34. Councillor Ross.
Present.
Councillor Sayers.
Present.
Present.
And Councillor Ware.
Present.
Thank you, Chair.
We also have the following officers present in the meeting and all on Teams. We've got Mark Whitmore, Gemma Curtis, Connor Smalls and Carl Holland. Please may I remind members that this meeting is being recorded and streamed live via YouTube. By attending this meeting, you are given your permission to be recorded and streamed. Members are asked to turn mobile phones off, avoid leaving the meeting and refrain from having side conversations during the meeting to avoid disruption. So going on to apologies for absence, I have one from Councillor Lowe. Any others? Okay, so minutes of the previous meeting. Can we agree if the meetings of the previous meeting held on the 25th September 2025 are a correct record? Declarations of interest. Do any members have any interest to declare, please? Councillor Rust.
When it comes to discussions relating to the security that is used for Remembrance Sunday, Councillor Bone and I use this company when we arrange Pride. We have no pecuniary interests, but the organisation does sponsor Pride.
Thank you. Any other interests? No, thank you. Urgent business, I have none. Members present understanding order 34, we have Councillor Moore, Councillor Kemp and Councillor Fry on Teams. Chair's correspondence, other than the email that was circulating about special expenses, I have nothing else. So on to car parking strategy. So if I could ask Officers Curtis and Smalls to present your presentation.
Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry I can't be with you in the room, but Connor is here to drive the slides for us and give an overview through this presentation. Before we start, I just wanted to say that in terms of the context of this work, we started this early last year and quite a significant amount of work has been done in terms of looking at all the data, understanding the issues, the opportunities, and there were some early engagement sessions with members and stakeholders last year as well. And I know members and stakeholders are keen to get an update and understand, where we are at with the parking strategy. But we felt it was sensible that we didn't want to finalise this until we've developed and have the outcome of the Kings Lynn master planning, because it's likely there will be some iterative changes that we may need to make to the parking strategy in order to support the master plan and vice versa. So what we will cover with you today is kind of the work to date, but recognise that it's likely to have some further development over the next few months before we can finalise and bring it to members for full conclusion and hopefully endorsement next year. So at this point I will hand over to Connor, who will go through the detail of the work that we've done to date. Thank you.
Thank you, Gemma. First slide here, an overview. I think Gemma's probably done a pretty good job of summarising that, so I won't dwell on this slide too much. In terms of the parking strategy as a document within the wider strategic context, this diagram just sort of outlines where it sits, alongside policies such as the local plan, heritage and culture strategy, and then we've highlighted there the interrelationship with the Kings Lynn Master Plan, which is in development at the moment. In terms of the draft Kings Lynn Transport Strategy, this is being led by County Council. This is sort of a brief overview of the vision, objectives, and some of the policies from that document as it emerges. I've highlighted at the bottom there policy 3 parking, which highlights that the County Council is working with us at the borough to develop and deliver this parking strategy, and it's about balancing the needs of those that need to park in town alongside public transport and active travel. And generally, the vision and objectives of the transport strategy are much aligned with the sort of purpose of the parking strategy as well. So in terms of the scope of the parking strategy, the aims and objectives, the scope and objectives are, as I said, sort of much aligned with the emerging transport strategy. The objectives are centred around supporting the vibrancy of the town centre, informing effective land use, which sort of aligns nicely with the Kings Lynn Master Plan work that's going online. It is working to provide a strategy which considers the wider sort of strategic context that I outlined before as well in terms of the local plan and the economic strategy. It's also, from a more operational perspective, looking at sustaining revenue and income streams for the council, and again making sure that the parking strategy aligns with the council's net zero ambitions and the wider climate change agenda of the council. So the next slide sort of summarises some key takeaways from the work that's been done so far. So I'll sort of run through these at some pace. You've also hopefully got the slides to read through if you want any more detail. In terms of the sort of key takeaways, we'll start with December is the overall demand peak for car parking, which is probably unsurprising being the Christmas month. 30% of all tickets sold were at the Tuesday marketplace. This is despite only having 8.5% of the total council-owned spaces in the town centre. During December, the most popular tickets sold throughout the year at Tuesday marketplace was the free 20-minute space. So if you want to use the word sold, that's the most popular ticket. Overall, the most popular ticket across all car parks was the up to 1 hour parking, with the free ticket being the second most popular. In terms of the split between long-term and short-term parking, it's relatively as you'd expect, with long-term being more focused on people working in Kings Lynn, with peak arrival times between 8 and 9 a.m. Short-term is more focused on visitors, with typical arrival times between 10 and 12. So in a neutral month, which I believe is March for the purposes of the study, a fifth of car parking capacity is available on a weekday. This reduces to about an eighth on a Saturday and Sunday. So visitor demand at the weekends exceeds staff user demands during the week. However, at all times at the moment, there is an amount of reserve capacity available. During the peak month, which is December, only 10% of total spaces are available across all car parks. This is a combination of long stay and short stay. This is the December Saturday. So again, this is highlighting the critical fact that is currently visitor demand on a Saturday at all times of the year. But again, to highlight, there is still currently capacity. In terms of the cashless payment option, so the app, there's been an increase as there on the slide from the period of time that the strategy is measured. There's been a 9% increase in usage of car parks between 2018 and 2023. Tuesday Marketplace brings in the most overall income, but this is closely followed by the multi-story. And there's been a 7% increase in income. It's just noted there as well that whilst there is an increase, it's smaller than seen in the overall car park usage increase, which is 9%. Moving on to some sort of more takeaways in terms of the usage and the relationship of car parking with sort of the urban fabric of the town centre. The car parking is noted to be spread across car parks and parking areas across the town centre. This limits the sort of efficient usage of the car parks and the opportunity to in turn maximise turnover. Again, looking at it from that sort of operational lens, it makes it more difficult to monitor and communicate parking capacity. Whilst we have the signs on the key entrances into town, it's not ideal when the car parks are sort of spread around, not conveniently located. So this is leading to redundant car trips around the town centre. Highlighting again, at most times of the year, there are currently spare car parking capacity, although because of the layout of the car parking, this isn't always apparent to visitors as they're travelling around the sort of urban core of the town centre. Another point to note is that most of the current car parking is provided in surface car parks. It's 60% of the available car parking capacity, and it's just highlighting again the efficient use of town centre land. In terms of long stay users, 32% of parking is aimed at these, and this offers the least revenue opportunity and also occupies large areas of parking capacity we have at the moment. In terms of the predicted summary of the draft transport strategy, it's important to note this is currently based on population growth projections only. It's not taking into account modal shift, projects underway and proposed. This is including the STARS gyratory scheme, the Southgate's master plan, bus service improvement works, the Kings Lynn local cycling and walking infrastructure plan, and then to add to that, the emerging Kings Lynn master plan. The report currently expects that Borough Council car parks will experience capacity issues on Saturdays in both the neutral, so March, and peak month of December in both 2030 and 2035. And at the 2035 mark, which is obviously quite a way into the future, car parking is predicted based on this methodology to be exceeded on weekdays at some points. The removal of car parks for development will therefore have to consider parking demand going forward. And this is sort of, whilst we're not updating about the Kings Lynn master plan in detail today, this really highlights that interrelationship between what the master plan is looking to do. So as we approach both 2030 and 2035, we will also be able to then factor in the development of modal shift, and that constant monitoring of parking demand is something that's sort of embedded into the strategy. So whilst it's making these predicted summaries, it's also sort of caveating that with the fact that we're going to need to make sure that we're monitoring the impact of mode shift, of active travel, of public transport impacts, which could then, account for either an increase or decrease in demand. And in terms of highlighting the current situation, it's important to remember, as highlighted there, that there's not currently a capacity issue, so the monitoring is going to be key. The draft report makes several recommendations based on the aims and objectives of the parking strategy as a whole. So I've broken these down into each draft recommendation. Some maybe seem slightly counterintuitive to one another, but hopefully it makes sense as I go through them. The first one is in regard to a park and ride, and this isn't in terms of a large-scale park and ride as you may see outside major cities such as Norwich and Cambridge. It's considering a more informal or seasonal option, such as that being developed at the Enterprise Park in terms of a travel hub. It's also considering the potential for the ferry in terms of a park and sale, and the possibility of considering that further, which again is falling into the sort of considerations of the master plan as well. New car parks may be required, and this isn't just new car parks in terms of increasing capacity, it's about allowing for development on other car parks in the town centre as in that consolidation and potentially rationalisation of car parks in more logical locations. In terms of expansion of existing car parks, it may be that in terms of accounting for development on some surface car parks, you look to expand existing, whether that's adding decking or accommodating extra space. But again, that's just a recommendation which will be explored in detail, both in the parking strategy and the Kings Lynn master plan in terms of feasibility. A reduction of existing car parks is, as I've said, to allow development on key sites identified. Some of those being in the master plan are surface car parks that the Borough Council owns, such as Bolquay, Common Safe Quay and Church Street car park. In terms of the parking provision itself on existing car parks, recommendations include increasing EV capacity spaces, as well as considering increasing the amount of space for disabled spaces. Car park design is more of an operational focus recommendation, looking at improving lighting and attractiveness of car parks, considering the addition of solar panels, formalising spaces on gravel car parks, and increasing the size of spaces where appropriate for accommodating larger vehicles. Parking charges and permits is another recommendation, which I've just put evaluate, and basically that's looking at how they compare to car parks around the country in comparable towns and locations, making sure they're at the right price and are achieving the aims of obviously encouraging people to consider alternatives, making sure it's still a viable option for those that need to park, and also the sort of revenue repercussions for the council as well. Signage and monitoring, this relates to like those large gantry signs at the entries, as I've said, as well as smaller signs directing you around the town centre. So it's making sure that car parks are clearly signposted so people can get to them, and monitoring the impact of that. And then mode shift is a final recommendation of the report, and this is looking at the impacts of public transport and active travel improvements and how parking sort of integrates into that wider consideration. So we've touched on this throughout the presentation, but it's sort of as Gemma mentioned at the beginning, it's that key interrelationship between how the parking strategy has to work with the Kingsland Master Plan. So as part of that master plan project, the team at BDP and their contractors Urban Flow have had the draft strategy to review and consider. As I've noted, several opportunity sites identified in the master plan are on Borough Council owned car parks, those being Church Street, Bulky and Common Staith, but there's also the consideration of other car parks that we're in the town centre, including Tuesday Marketplace, so they'll be looking and reviewing the options for those. And the sort of the key driver of the master plan is addressing this opportunity to address the inefficient use of land that we currently have in terms of the extensive surface car parking, and as I touched on, that rationalisation and consolidation of car parking, trying to reduce vehicles driving around the sort of historic urban streets of town, whilst also making sure that we have appropriate levels of parking to make sure that people can still drive into town if they need to. As an example of consolidation, we have referenced here the active travel hub that's proposed at the Kingsland Enterprise Park. This is potentially acting as that sort of informal park and ride. It'll be adjacent to an existing bus service, as well as offering the potential to park on the outskirts of town, travel in either by sustainable or public transport modes. Further options emerging for the master plan work include looking at the port area and the potential for car parking on the edge of the town centre, so it's still an attractive and close option in terms of being able to walk into town, but avoiding those redundant trips around those really historic streets, thinking of like King Street and Queen Street. There's also the potential, as I mentioned, of the ferry and looking into the potential and the feasibility of sort of making that more of a park and sale offer. So yeah, that is the end of the slides. Welcome any questions. Thank you.
I've got Councillor Bone first, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the comprehensive presentation. Does these figures in your strategy take into account the number of people that are parking in the residential streets adjacent to the town centre rather than using our car parks? Obviously, this is having a huge impact on our local residents who cannot park outside their own properties. And Councillor Hennigan and I have had a number of requests actually for residents willing to pay for permits, and obviously if they get these permits, are these side streets regularly policed? Obviously our ward will have many streets adjacent to the town centre, but also when before I was a councillor and I worked at the Gravy Boat, it would quite often be people coming up on the Loke Roads and the side streets there, all wearing our lanyards and then walking into the council offices. So in your strategy, what is there any thought given to the local residents who can't park outside their home and policing that, because it is quite a big problem for residents that actually live adjacent to the town centre?
I think Gemma's got a hand. Do you want to come in first, Gemma? I'm happy to add anything, but do you want to go first?
Yeah, I can help answer that question. So we haven't included residential parking as part of the scope of the strategy because we focused more on the public car parks, particularly where the in the main the borough council are operating. However, and it's difficult. We don't have data obviously around how they are being used. So it's really good to hear that kind of feedback though, because that's the kind of thing that we can reflect in terms of recommendations from stakeholders like yourselves around that this is being flagged as a concern by residents, and it's something we can follow up with the county council, because obviously as the highways authority they're the ones that will be responsible for on-street parking. I'm aware there's been consultations previously a number of years ago, I think around certain areas of town that consulted on permit schemes. Not all of them were taken forward. Some have been, so for example on Waterloo Street, and they have been really successful. So I think we've got some some good examples of where they've worked well, and if there's an appetite and a desire from residents to see more of that, then that is something that we can add as a recommendation to the strategy and see about taking that forward with the county council.
Okay, thank you. It might be worth doing a survey within our organisation and ask where our officers park before they go to work. Thank you.
Councillor Hennigan next, please.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for the report. It's a question about the Nauru's travel hub. I mean, I believe its original idea was sort of you could park there and cycle into town. I'm pleased to see there's going to be a public transport option to that, which is basically park and ride, which I think a lot of people have been asking for a lot of years. So is there, if it's, how many spaces are there going to be available there? If it was successful and it was actually people were choosing to park there and cycle or bus into town, is there capacity to actually expand that car park?
So the first phase of that car park is delivering around 50 spaces, and with a view for that very reason to kind of, you know, we don't want to proceed with a great big huge car park and then there isn't demand for it. So it's the design has allowed for, and there is a design scoped out for to be able to expand that car park into a later phase to accommodate up to 270 spaces off the top of my head, I think it is. So there is certainly that picture that you can see on the screen there is showing the full scheme. 200, that doesn't look like 200, but I believe there's 200 spaces that's been, we can get the correct figures for you, that's been looked at as the complete scheme, but the initial first phase that we'll be delivering will be around 50 spaces, obviously along with the cycling and bus stop infrastructure.
Sorry, could I have a follow-up? Thank you. I mean, obviously, and to encourage people to use it, it's if they're going to cycle or bus into town, that needs to be easier for them and quicker than driving. So I'm assuming that we'll have plans to have bus lanes and cycle lanes into town from there, if we can, logically.
Yeah, so so there is actually really good cycle infrastructure already from within the Nauru's regeneration area. So there's the cycle, the footpath that goes up to the south gates, and then obviously onto Hardings Way, which is you know, a really pleasant route for walking and cycling. The bus route, what we are also looking to do in early discussions, for example, are with bus operators that in there around joint ticketing. You know, if you want to park and then get on the bus, you know, it would be, want to try and make it as convenient as possible for people, so they don't have to buy a ticket for parking and then buy a ticket for the bus. It's a joint ticket arrangement. We're exploring those types of ideas because this is all about, you know, in order to encourage people to use this facility, we've got to make it as convenient and attractive as possible for people.
Councillor Kemp, I know you're waiting on Teams. I'll go to the SO34s in a moment. Thank you. Councillor Russ, please.
Thank you, Chair. Gemma, I don't mean to contradict you, but there aren't actually really good cycle routes. And I know because I use them. So you can get along the riverbank from South Lynn, but I don't think that that's in any way close to where the travel hub is planned to be. But sorry? Yeah, so as a regular cyclist and one that does actually cycle to places like West Lynn from where we live, I would just suggest that the cycle routes through town, if you, I mean, you can go down London Road and Railway Road, there aren't any there. You cut through the back of Friar Street and Hillington Square, but unless I've just totally wiped them from my memory, there aren't any cycle routes.
We can share a plan if you like, because obviously you've got Hardings Way. That would be the most desirable. If you're parking up at the active travel hub and then walking and cycling into town, or vice versa, we would probably recommend the best route for that would be through the Central Park, over the bridge, over the Nauru's, over the Nar, and or along Nauru's Way, and then pick up Hardings Way along Wisbeach Road, rather than go through the heavily trafficked area like London Road and Railway Road. Obviously, we're also looking, or the county are looking at the gyratory as a one-way system, and there's a scheme developed for that to improve those walking and cycling links there. And you're right, though, there are definitely still gaps in the network, and that's why we've got a local cycling and walking infrastructure plan, and hopefully as funding becomes available, we'll continue to keep implementing a number of those schemes to make sure we've got the best walking and cycling network we can have. But yeah, that from Naru's, as just to confirm, that just from the Naru's Way site into town, definitely this route, which Connor's helpfully put on the screen, would be probably the most desirable for walking and cycling.
Yeah, thank you, Gemma. You're absolutely right. And I do use that. I did say whether I'd just totally forgotten it.
I've got Councillor Sayers, Councillor Colwell, and then I'll go to the SO34s. So Councillor Sayers, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report. I've got 3 questions, if I may ask them all in one go. First is a deeper dive in the data. You say there's a 9% increase in usage between 2018 and 2023. Is that individual stays? Is that length of stays, or a weighting of that data so that you get a round picture? The second question is on EVs and encouragement for the transition to electric vehicles and electric charging points. Are we missing a trick that people will need EV charging points, and that's a revenue source we as a council could take advantage of? And the third is, bear with me while I check my notes. No, come back to me. I'll find my notes for the third question.
In terms of EVs, I think one of the recommendations of the report is to consider increasing that provision. So certainly it's something that going forward we would be encouraged to consider as a result of the report. In terms of usage, I believe it's in terms of the amount of stays. It's something we could perhaps clarify to completely bottom out, but I'm pretty sure that's what the data is recommending.
Councillor Sayers, if you remembered the third question that you
Yes,
had.
it was accessibility for disabled people. Are we meeting demand? Are there enough spaces and located near key destinations?
Yeah, that's another recommendation in the report, to make sure that we review each car park and make sure there's the appropriate provision. That's one of those recommendations. I'll go back to the recommendation slide. I think that comes under the overall is that the car park design one, I think, is it? It's one of the recommendations, though. There's the word, it's on there somewhere.
If I've missed it, I apologise.
No worries. But no, in essence, yes, that is a recommendation from the report to make sure that we are up to scratch with the provision for disabled spaces.
Councillor Colwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I probably should have declared an interest at the start, because I absolutely hate paying for parking. I will go out of my way wherever I go to avoid it. I just see it as a tax, parking tax upon buying goods, shopping. I see it as a tax upon restaurants, and so I'll be looking really excitedly when the final reports and recommendations come out. I just wondered, I was looking at the key takeaways, and I thought it was really interesting where it says that majority of people bluntly want to park in or around Tuesday Marketplace, and bluntly the most people don't want to pay, they just want to have up to an hour or free parking. So I just hope that some good news, is there any positive news that can be given to those people that have shops on the high street, that have restaurants on the high street, that we are listening, and that we are actually, the parking strategy is going to give people, local residents, what they want? Yeah, thanks.
I'm happy to attempt that question, Chair.
Yep, thank you.
Yeah. But I might ask for the support of my Deputy Section 151 officer as well. I think there's obviously a balance to strike in terms of making the town accessible, Obviously, the council's got to maintain and run these areas, and as I'm sure members are aware, obviously the parking income is a significant source of income to maintain not just the existing car parks, but lots of other services for the council. So there is definitely a balance to strike. Well, I don't know if Carl's got anything to add on that point, but yeah, it's a challenge, and we can appreciate why people would like to see more free car parking. There's also obviously a push-pull element to that as well, as if we want to encourage more people to park out of town, to walk and cycle into town, to avoid, creating congestion in the town centre and the historic core, which is, damaging to our town, to the heritage in our town. Then actually encouraging free use of car parking is not actually going to actively encourage other people to use other modes, whether it's getting, paying to get on the bus, paying to use the ferry, or to walk and cycle. So there is, there's lots of different push and pull factors that has to be considered. I don't know if Carl wants to add anything on the finance aspect.
Thank you, Gemma. I don't think I can top an economic development professional's answer on that subject, really. But if you want the financial opinion, obviously we do have to maintain car parks. We have to make sure that they're safe and attractive places to use. There is a cost to that. I'm going to give you the accountant's answer, aren't I? It's all of those things, factors that Gemma said, plus the fact that we do benchmark our charges against other similar towns, boroughs and districts, and try, to demonstrate that we are not needlessly charging above and beyond the needs to provide the services of the Borough Council.
Thank you. We'll go on to Councillor Kemp now, please, on Teams.
Yes, thank you. Well, that's a very interesting presentation. Thank you for all the work you've done. And I think this is where Hardings Way really comes into its own, because it's there to speed up buses and an important part of walking and cycling infrastructure. So now we're getting the park and ride. Looking at the best use for it, it would seem that targeting people who are commuters rather than casual shoppers to use it would be really advantageous, people that would otherwise be tying up a parking space all day. Now, to achieve this, are we actively considering travel plans? For example, businesses that we know employ people in the town centre, would we be approaching them, and also working with the bus operators? Is it possible to have extra buses early in the morning? From memory, I believe there are 2 buses every hour at the moment, the X1 from Peterborough. I believe that's all there is, and it's a bit of a wait and a cold morning, isn't it? So I don't know whether anything else could be done, whether we could have something like the equivalent of the hospital buggy, just sort of have extra journeys into town, maybe a minibus. Are we being flexible like that? Could you sort of comment on what we're going to do to maximise the potential of the park and ride, please?
Yes, happy to, if that's okay, Chair.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, you're completely right there, Councillor Kemp. So there is through the bus service improvement plan, the County Council funded a trial of a service around, and I can't remember what the number service it is, but it's essentially a go to town West Norfolk Community Transport Service, I believe, that runs through the Nar Valley Park and round Narews Way, and it's hoped that that will continue and be able to pick up, obviously, people from the Active Travel Hub as well. So that's something, obviously, aligning the bus services with this project is something that's actively happening and in discussions with the County Council on. Sorry, there was one other point, wasn't there? Was it that? Was there anything else?
The travel plans.
The travel plans, yes.
Plan.
So actually,
yes,
as part of the Active and Clean Connectivity programme through the town deal, we received funding to complete up to 6 travel plans, and we have so far completed travel plans at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, Mars, and Greenyard have been 3 of them. The Borough Council have also completed their own travel plan. And I think, actually, Connor, you're doing a update to the Climate Change Working Group group on some of that work, aren't you, soon? So yes, that is certainly an ambition that we'd like to do more of those. What we've tried to do with the active travel planning work so far is target the largest employers, because obviously that's where you can have the biggest impact. And what we have looked at, particularly in terms of town centre, is maybe we need to look at a travel plan approach that looks at, because obviously there's most of the town centre businesses are small or micro businesses, so we need to look at how we can do travel planning across a large number of businesses in a small area to do small. That's quite an intensive piece of work. So but we've definitely made a start on that, and that is something obviously we'd like to be able to do more of as funding becomes available.
Thank you. If I just might follow up on that, the bus that you've got, the go to town bus, Gemma, you're referring to the 3H, aren't you?
I would have to double check.
The new one. Yeah, because that one
Yeah.
is the medical bus. And I would like to tell everybody that that was nearly cancelled this year because the county council said it didn't have high enough occupancy, only 40%. And I had to argue the case for it to be kept. So I think this is something we all need to be advocating for, because we need to keep our buses and increase them in the town, not reduce any. Thank
you, Councillor Kemp. On the subject of the 3H, I'm going to defer to Councillor Russ because I think there was at one of the West Norfolk Community Transport Management meetings about the future of the 3H, and Councillor Rust is going to update on that one, I think.
Yes, so on the 30th of September, I attended the West Norfolk Community Transport meeting. They advised that Norfolk County Council had agreed £10,000 worth of top-up funding for the 3H route, and Norfolk County Council did want the 3H route to continue. However, they are not prepared to fund the losses that the route makes, and so it's going to be cancelled unless something changes from January next year. They had worked with Norfolk County Council about the 3H and other routes to see if it could be made, it could be improved, but at the date of the last meeting on the 30th, the intention was to cancel the 3H from January.
Thank you for that update there, Councillor Rust. I knew you had something about it. Sorry for skipping you. Councillor Hennigan, please.
I think Gemma and Carl covered my point quite well. It was about free parking. I think we'd all love free parking as politician. Of course, we want to be able to promise that to people, but reality is we have to balance the books, and we also have to, it does cost to provide car parking as well. So I just don't think it's terribly realistic to be calling for that.
Okay, thank you. So we will go on to the recommendation. No, that's the next item. I'm jumping ahead. Right, so thank you very much for the car parking strategy. So go on to item 8, which is special expenses. Carl Holland, do you want to present, please?
Thank you, Chairman. Okay, so this is the draft budget for the committee's next financial year. It's draft because the Borough Council, it forms part of the Borough Council's wider budget. The Borough Council is working on, as we speak, developing its own medium-term financial plan for the next 4 financial years. And that takes us, well, that will come before Cabinet and Council in February 2026, so next year. But we like to present this draft budget as soon as we practically can in the autumn to yourselves. But it's just to flag that it is susceptible to change. So if I start at the table in paragraph 1.4, that's just to remind you of the budget for 25-26, our current financial year. At our previous meeting, we updated you on the outturn for 24-25, and we also updated you on a forecast for the current financial year. And at your next meeting, we'll provide a further update on the forecast for 25-26. Just at the bottom of that table, just to remind you all, the Band D equivalent council tax that goes towards funding your budget was set at £51.72, and the tax base was 11,192.1 properties. So we multiply those two figures together, and that gives us the £578,000 that goes towards your budget. So I'm working my way back up the top from the bottom of this table upwards. So I'm now at the £578,000 that council tax will fund your budget. And then we get to the next line of £122,000, and this is the amount, the shortfall really from what your budget constitutes between the budget and what you collect in council tax. And the reason there is a shortfall is because your council tax is collected as part of the borough council's council tax. And unfortunately, that means that you are capped in the same way that the borough council is. So the borough council is capped at no increases no more than £5 on its Band D equivalent properties and its council tax bills each year. Parish councils aren't restricted in the same way. You are not a town council, therefore you fall within the rules of the borough council, unfortunately. This is important because it's deemed that of the £5 increase that the borough council can increase, 50 pence of that increase is what this committee would receive towards its budget. So that £51.72 can only really go up. The rules apply again for next year, can really only go up by 50p maximum. I'll move on to the next table, which follows at paragraph 2.2. So this is the draft proposed budget for the coming financial year 26-27. So it increases slightly over the previous year. So last year, the current year, 25-26, was £701,000, and it's increasing to £718,000. So given inflation is still high, particularly on utilities, it's not a terrible increase. But I need to flag also that your tax base for the current year was 11,192. It's actually going to decrease not in real terms, in the formula that we have to use to calculate what your tax base is. So we have to take account of all the discounted properties that exist within your area, and also those properties that are supported by our council tax support scheme. So it has this effect of diluting your Band D equivalents, which unfortunately it's estimates, but it brings it down to 11,063 this year. So whilst we can increase your £51.72 per Band D property by 50 pence, we are also bringing down your tax base to which that relates. So it basically means that this year the shortfall is still relevant against your budget. I'm just reminding myself that 2.7 we've set out there what this means. So there's 120, no, it's not there, 2.6, £140,000 shortfall, which obviously the borough council will stand. It's just bringing all of that together, really, that we can set the budget at £718,000. But there's a combination of what you can collect through council tax. Unfortunately, due to this referendum limit, it means that we still have this shortfall to address. So I just want to draw your attention to that. But going back to the budget itself, we've put in there at section 2.3 some information around why the costs are going up. Typically, it's inflation. There's not a lot changes year on year in terms of your site coverage. your open spaces offer and how those open spaces are maintained. The main increase is inflation relating to staffing costs, transport costs, and utility costs. I circulated to the committee this week at their request some further information to back this, to explain the detail behind each of these budget lines. But I appreciate that subsequent correspondence has driven a lot of interest and a lot of very sensible questions. And I detect an eagerness to manage these costs and also drive up the income. So what I would propose is taking account of the fact that the council itself has a strategic plan objective to look into setting up a town council. So this would be an opportunity, if this is how it progresses, we set up a town council where you would not be subject to the capping rules on council tax. You could set your budget. You could be more innovative about how you apply your budget. And if you felt that you needed, and the public were willing to be more ambitious and innovative with the use of your budget, you could increase your Band D council tax charge beyond that limit, unfortunately, which you are bound at the moment. So that that process of considering a town council kicks off in the new year. We have the electoral arrangements committee of the council, so a paper will be presented to them in the new year. But in the meantime, I propose that process itself could take a year, 2 years. It's that kind of time scale. So in the meantime, I would like to propose that my finance team drill down on these figures and make proposals about how we can reduce the costs, and indeed make you aware of certain areas like the pavilions where we may be able to do something different, something more to generate better levels of income to cover those costs. It wouldn't necessarily be at the next meeting, but by the time we report the outturn for this financial year, which I would suggest is July, and if there's anything we can report before then, we will. But at the latest, I would say July, we can do some work, working with the chair of the committee and coming back to the committee itself with further explanations and understanding of what's driving these costs and what generates the income. I think that covers off the report, and obviously there's been emails around this week, but I'll take any questions on the basis of what we've got in front of us today.
Okay, so we'll go to Councillor Sayers first, please.
Thank you, Chair. My question is on bus shelters. Just want to clarify, is this the net cost to us in our budget, or is this the gross cost and we've not got any revenue against it? But the reason I ask is back in 2021, this committee asked if we could have the revenues from advertising brought to us. Is that the net cost after that revenue has been taken into account?
Excuse me, that is net cost. And it's one of the areas where I believe the income is going down slightly. We had a major contributor drop out of their contract. So I think the income's gone down, but that means there's an opportunity for someone else to utilise those shelters. So that needs to be explored. But we have the current forecast in the current year is showing that that income's dropped off. So we do need to look at that. But that is your net cost, to answer your question.
Councillor Bone next, please.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, we welcome the proposals, and I'm sure the actual making efficiency should actually be part of the transformation programme which are undertaken. You mentioned about I would like to pass comment I mentioned about how the council tax support schemes dilutes the bandwidth. I wouldn't change that for the world, and that was a hard fought battle for a period of years to actually get that support scheme in place. Looking at, and I have seen and read some of the reports, but some of the figures just seem a little bit strange, like toilets costing less, and like public convenience costing less, and dog bins, for example, and things like that. So rest rate seems relatively straightforward. Questions would be where do you think these efficiencies would come from, and where could we make efficiencies and savings, and then obviously produce greater revenues from some of these, if possible, services like such as the advertising revenue from that. They might be done differently and more digitally thingy, but there's still big spaces on the side of the road which could be utilised, and I feel we're missing probably opportunities there.
Thank you, Councillor Bone. I wouldn't want to presume too much in advance, but I think we've got to pick off as a priority those top 3-4 areas where we can understand better that there's opportunities for promoting. I think the pavilions is a good one, where if we explore it with the members of this committee, we'll identify new, fresh opportunities. I would like to liaise with our leisure services team as well. They'll have their ideas. And we wouldn't want to operate in isolation without the views and thoughts of this committee to generate additional income. My team's specialism will be exploring the costs. I think the utilities seem high in some areas. I think the footway lighting, progressively we convert them to LED lighting. That's always on part of the programme. So whether there's an opportunity to accelerate that is to be explored. The utilities around the community centres, obviously the more they're used, the more the utility costs go up. So are we on the most efficient and effective contract for those power sources? Same with pavilions. The open spaces, again, I think is another one where we talk to the operational team and see what their suggestions are. And probably the same with the public conveniences. I noticed in some of the correspondence we had this week, the transport costs were noted for being considered high. We just need to explore, why is that? We also looked at the remembrance service support, but I think I'll leave the lower level of stuff as a lower priority, and we will do our best to cover most of these lines, but with a view to getting some quick wins like the utility costs, and also exploring with this committee how we can increase our income.
Councillor Joyce, please.
Yes, I'm not blaming you for this, Carl, I'm blaming me. People of Lynn are proud people. They want to pay for what they have, but they don't want to be seen as mugs. And there's a fine line between that. When I looked at those budgets and some of the figures you sent back to me, I thought slush fund. That's exactly what I thought. Not blaming you, I'm blaming me. And I hear what you say about the finance team looking at certain things, but really, all right, not the entire CLAC. 3 or 4 members of CLAC should be involved in that, bringing forward ideas as to what can be done, what is possible, how can the costs be reduced so that there isn't £140,000 subsidy from everywhere else to the Lynn taxpayers. Like I say, they're proud people, they want to pay for what they're having, but they don't want to be seen as mugs either. And so this is not the day or the time to actually put proposals together for something like that. But the CLAC needs to sit down and seriously look at the special expenses, and a large group can't do that, because they'll just argue with each other, and it's not been said until everyone has said it. Just look at the planning committee. It's what happens. And so, if not today, maybe the chairman and his deputy, vice chairman, wherever he's called, could pick out one or two people to go with your finance team. Then when they've spoken to your finance team to know where the money's actually being spent, where the money's coming from, come up with ideas as to how to reduce it. You know, I'll give you the instance. A village usually runs the village hall. The parish council is usually the corporate trustee and it's a charity. The village hall is a charity. What you're telling us from your figures is that 2 community centres are costing 110,000 to run. No, that's not serious. That's not serious. You're saying that nearly £10,000 is spent on transport for public conveniences. You know, if you took the mayor around on a tour every day, it wouldn't come at £10,000. But there are things that can be done, and you probably know this better than me, that there are the villages, the same as the people of Lynn. They do not like the idea of the borough council cutting the borough council's grass and charging them for it, because when that grass is utilised, they don't get anything, and that's the problem. It's like your allotment holders. If you charge someone for a piece of land, you include the administrative cost, whatever that happens to be. You include that in the charge for the land. There should be no extra administrative cost. And, you know, I can go through them all. I mean, Jo has gone now and she was talking about the dog bins. Now, I'll tell you now, the last thing that I would want to see leave the borough council is the dog bins, because the lads, you know, I'm not politically correct, so they are lads. They do a good job. They do a really good job. I've never heard a complaint about dog bins, except poor old Rob, who can't have one. But that's another thing. Maybe the CLAC should be looking at that to see where a dog bin can be put, or a litter bin can be put, rather than leaving it outside, you know, the control of the people who are responsible, ultimately responsible for the spending of the money. Now, I don't expect you to answer that, but it's down to the CLAC. You know, I've said the chairman and his vice chairman and a couple of others should really sit down and try and pull someone together and do something about it.
Thank you, Councillor Joyce. Yes. I've got a...
You're more than able to do it, Ben, so don't say that.
Yeah, so I detect a proposal in your speech there. I'll come back to you on that one. I'll see what other people want to say in regards to special expenditure. So I've got Councillor Collop next, please.
It's regarding the Gaywood Remembrance Service. The figures for 24 was 1,161.60. This year it's 128,160, which is not too bad. There's £250 this year extra for first aiders. Now this is the first time that I have known, because I sit on the Gaywood Allotment Trust, to have the meeting regarding the Remembrance Service, like August time, when we're trying to sort it out. And I've never known this first aider money to be taken out. And I'm just wondering, do the other, like the town and Stanton and Downham Market, do they have to pay for first aiders when they have their remembrance services, please?
I don't know that we can answer that question tonight, but I would expect that they do. If it's a public event, you need to have the necessary insurances and cover in place. I mean, those events are organised by the town councils for their communities in much the same way as CLAC is supporting the Gaywood event. With that comes the usual costs of putting on a public event, and I would have thought first aid would have been covered in that. Well, I can do what I can around it, but obviously it's a Hunstanton Town Council event or another event. In terms of first aid, what I would very much expect we do, but we can take that away and come back to you. Yeah, absolutely.
Councillor Bone, I think you wanted to
come back on this one. So, in my opinion, well, in my knowledge, that's a really expensive quote for a first aid period coverage for a couple of hour event, and I will pass on to Mark because I don't want to have a pecuniary interest, but I know there are cheaper first aid providers. But what I can say, at the Remembrance event at the Tower Gardens, with St John's Ambulance was there, and then someone during the procession actually did require treatment, and they responded quite there. So there is certainly definitely a need to have it, and an event management plan would represent that. But I'm sure the event Remembrance Sunday at Gatwood would not have the numbers or the time duration to require a quote at such a high price. That is really inflated. So again, it might be worth working with officers to find a better deal. But yeah, you certainly do need.
I think that's part of what Carl has been expressing to the committee about a deeper dive into some of these costs to understand where they are and if they're realistic, to provide you that assurance. Obviously, CLAC has the ability to set up subcommittees, task groups, etc. So.
yeah, thank you for that. Councillor Hennigan next, please.
It's just a question really, and probably one that you can't give an answer to, and I think you might have just covered it there, but I mean, I'm sort of trying to figure out, it's quite obvious what some of the costs are, but when it comes to the open spaces, it's quite a big figure of £375,000. I could do with a little bit of a breakdown of what that covers, to be honest, because it's hard. It seems like quite a, but not now. If that can be provided at a later stage, that would be very helpful.
Can I just see clarification, please? Are you meaning what sites does it cover? What services are provided at those sites? Or do you want to just see the financial breakdown?
It's a financial breakdown. I mean, sort of all of the above. Which sites does it cover? What exactly is provided for that money? What are we paying for? I mean, that would be a very big open space. Yeah.
Yeah, it would be on my priority list to just find, get that context around the budget line for you. So it wouldn't be a quick one, because as I said in my correspondence with the committee this week, the workings behind this is coming from a variety of services of the council in a variety of forms, and then the finance team pull it together, and then to just plonk that in front of individual members of the committee would take an awful lot of officer time. So I think we do need to just go away and do a robust piece of work and present it in a form that is meaningful for this committee.
And understandable, I think, for those of us who aren't accountants would be quite helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with Councillor Hennigan. It's like a lot of, I'll come further on in a minute, but these figures just like, I'm not going to use Councillor Joyce's terminology, but it just seems like figures have been, I wouldn't say plucked out of thin air, but they do seem to be quite high. But then maybe the committee kind of would want to see kind of, in a sense, just how much we're paying for each item in that big figure, because you just tell someone 350 grand, it's like, whoa. But then when you split it down into where you're paying X for this, paying Y for the walks, you're paying Z for this, do you know what I mean? I don't know if that's what you mean in Councillor Hennigan.
Well, it is. I'd sort of like to understand how the money is spent, because I mean, it's hard for us to sort of comment on on expenditure if we don't really know what it's being spent on. I really have a lack of understanding there. I mean, are we talking about we need less primroses planted next year in order to save costs? Because I've got no idea how much it costs to plant a bunch of primroses. So maybe not quite so much micro detail, but it'd just be a little bit more helpful.
Councillor Sayers, please.
Thank you, Chair. And apologies for coming back. I just wanted to give a response to Charles Joyce about the dog bins.
Oh, right.
Because Rob and I have had meetings with leadership at the council. So we have a pot of money, as you know, from county that we can apportion for capital spends, and we've allocated that money. But it's the challenge for us is getting them collected. So the waste collected from new bins, that is the challenge that we are having in getting the revenue cost in getting new bins sited, but the capital cost we have met. And as for me as a question, it's regarding streetlights again. I can see on the Borough Council we've got a number of sites with red saying that they are fault and they have been reported. Is that cost for investigating, identifying what the fault is, and then going back out to repair a portion to CLAC as part of our costs, or is that a maintenance cost in general? Are we expected to pick up the potentially 2 or 3 visits to go and assess and identify what faults are, and or verify that there is a fault with a street light? And addendum to that, probably more of an observation than a question, I noticed that on the same map there is a number of lights out at the bus station, and we've seen in the press this week about crime elevating at the bus station. Are we potentially missing a trick here that cause and effect if there were adequate street lights at the bus station? I haven't verified whether they are operational because it's just on the map here. Should we make that a priority to prevent as much crime as we can and the loitering that's happening at the bus station? Thank you.
The way the charge for the lighting is calculated is that we take the costs for the borough as a whole. That will include maintenance, inspections and replacement, as well as utility costs. And then we have a record of the number of streetlights that covers, and we literally work out what the average cost is for each light. Then we have the geolocation map that tells us how many fall within the remit of this committee, and that's how we arrive at this gross cost for footway lighting. So it's really averaging that cost. So if you had a high spike in light failures here, resulting in numerous inspections and replacements, that cost is distributed widely across the borough. Likewise, if there was a spike somewhere else in the borough, it's evened out. That's the current scientific process that we apply to calculate a reasonable cost and recharge.
Sorry, Chair, may I counter that logic? Because am I right in thinking that your depot is in Old Meadow Road, and travelling, for example, from there to somewhere in Kings Lynn to repair it is not particularly many miles, but then going out to somewhere deep into the, say, the wilds of Norfolk or the borough might be quite a substantial journey, and have potentially fuel costs on there, where that cost will be substantially more than a relatively local journey, and the waiting may be then charging us for and subsidising journeys deeper into Kings Lynn's and West Norfolk's outer areas of the borough.
Point taken and noted. I guess it's being pragmatic. There is a science to all of these charges and calculations. So some I don't want to use the words win and lose, but some are more favourable. Some, you will be subsidising perhaps. It's not going to be material for sure. We've had to adopt some pragmatic approaches to recharging what are quite complex well, and then just complex services. If we talk about the open spaces, we've got transport tools, we've got storage here, there, you know, storage exists on many of the open space areas. Therefore, there's less travelling and transport involved, but there's utilities there, there's insurance around those sites. We've got fuel, we've got staff, we've got protective equipment to cover off. So we're not looking to go down to too much detail, but I think all we can expect to do is improve our understanding of how these charges are arrived at, and it is scientific. There is no muddying of the waters. It's just a question of, for example, looking at the utilities and asking ourselves, do we think we can get a better deal? In going back to Councillor Hennigan's question around open spaces, yes, it includes the bedding plants, the cost for the bedding plants and planting those bedding plants. So we've got a fair amount of detail. We do it per square metre where appropriate. We do it per lamp where appropriate. So I think we can improve that understanding. But then you've got to also think about the materiality of what we're trying to achieve at the end of the day.
Councillor Kemp, thank you for waiting. So we'll go to yourself now.
Thank you. Well, I've got a couple of points. One thing I would refer to, Carl, please, Chair. It's about a concept of double taxation, because what you've said is we've got a budget of about £700,000, and this year we had a subsidy £122,000 from the borough, which wouldn't occur if there was a town council, because it could raise the precept from the residents. But surely then there should be a corresponding reduction in the council tax paid to the borough council or the unitary. Otherwise people will be paying twice. Could you please clarify that? And secondly, about the community centres, because I agree with Councillor Joyce that maybe it would be helpful for us to look into this with a bit more detail. And with the South Lynn Community Centre in particular, would you be able to tell us, since the costs are halved for residents to hire the centre, whether we've seen an increase in income, and also the loss of one of the tenants, a charity who's about to sadly to go and cease trading, whether we're going to find another replacement tenant? So there's quite a lot in there, but it's the double taxation one. I just think there's an issue of fairness there.
Well, in answer to the question on double taxation, it's not the terminology I would use. It's because it infers there would be double taxation, and you answered your own question in the sense that if this committee became a town council and raised its own council tax, that would mean that the borough council would not be requiring that share. So we wouldn't be, double taking the council tax. The borough council wouldn't still continue to take that share. You would be raising your own funds directly and completely, and the borough council would lose that share. What will happen if it's 2 years' time that you have a town council, assuming all processes go and the public are in favour of setting up a town council, then inflation would take over, and I don't think we would be talking about a reduction in council tax for the borough council in real terms, but there is an element of it. Well, it would reduce if everything stayed still. Yeah, if the borough council raises, if the town council raises the 140k shortfall, then the borough council wouldn't be raising that at the same time. So that's the first question. You were right. You answered your own question. In terms of the South Lynn Community Centre, again, we're getting into detail that I probably can't answer much on. But yes, if someone is vacating the South Lynn Community Centre, then we're looking to this committee to raise awareness of what we do with that space. Obviously, if we can attract income at the same time, terrific. But if it's better used for social purposes, then terrific too. But as long as we understand what we're doing, so yeah, you folks are users of these facilities, and therefore you're well placed to come back with suggestions and ideas. We have the property services manage that environment, So if with the agreement of the appropriate officers, there's an opportunity to fill that with an income generating tenant, then of course, yes, we will explore that.
And the point about, have we increased the income since we've halved the cost to residents of hiring? Are you able to circulate those figures if you don't have them to hand, please?
I shall do my best to do that, Councillor Kemp. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kemp. We'll go on to Councillor Joyce now, please.
Yes. On these dog bins, it's really simple. If you reduce your special expenses, you are left with a revenue, because taxes do not go down, especially with the Labour government. They do not go down, they just go up, as Carl has said. But there's also other areas of funding that you could look at, and Carl is sitting down, so I've got to be brave enough to say it. 10p off the car parking tickets goes to the back budget. It's just a figure I pulled out of the air, but it's the principle of it. Then you don't have, I suspect it will be more than £140,000 that the Borough Council is putting in. And I don't know, it's only a guess, but it is something. People shouldn't be able to put a dog bin every 5 yards or a litter bin every 10 yards. It does need someone to have some kind of control over it and to hear a reasoned argument before everyone else has to pay for it, because that's what happens. That's what happens with dog bins, that's what happens with litter bins, that's what happens with community centres. I mean, people in North Gaywood, they're paying for South Lynn and Firsted. Northland doesn't even have a community centre, does it, Ben? The building on it. It's not fair to everyone, but you really do have to actually progress something and take control of your own money. It really is about financial management. Now, Carl and his team will help. There's no question about that. Mark and his team will help, and Nathan's gone, but whoever has taken over will help. But it is about actually doing something. And I can tell you how to obliterate the costs on the community centres. It's really simple. Pavilions, much more difficult, and there will be resistance. Allotments, like I've already said, the price of the land covers the administrative cost. So if the allotment holders themselves are doing their own administration work, there is no cost. If others are not doing their own administration, then yes, there is a cost, and that means the land is more expensive. It won't be long before they do their own administration. And that is what it's all about. But you've fed up by hearing me rabble on. So we do need to actually take control. And 2 or 3 people can say whether David and Rob can have revenue for their litter bin, for their dog bin. I suspect you're going to say yes anyway. That's what it's all about. That's what about being a parish council is. And don't forget, the Borough Council does subsidise this committee in other ways. I mean, the parish clerk is not going to come free. Parish clerk is going to cost £23 an hour, which would include on costs at this particular time. So, it's simple as that, just the clerking that you're going to have to look at. What do you think to the 10p from the car parking ticket, Carl? Don't answer it.
Thank you, Councillor Joyce. Did you want to respond at all to any of that, or no need to? No, okay. No need to. Okay. Right.
Carriers for someone else.
Councillor Colwell, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question. It kind of relates to Agenda 10, where we're going to be talking about a CLAC support officer. I couldn't see, and correct me if I'm wrong, apologies if I've misunderstood this, but I couldn't see the costs of that, which the item states will come out of the CLAC budget, specifically referenced here. And my immediate thoughts were it was part of the open spaces, a significant increase of estimated where it talks about staffing costs, but that doesn't appear to be enough. So could I just have some information about that, please?
So the CLAC support officer, without wanting to jump ahead on the agenda, is funded out a few years ago. Committee will remember that a fund, a pot of approximately £66,000 was set aside for CLAC around projects. So the piece we're talking around how we're supporting the parish partnership piece, that's coming out of that budget. It's not coming out of special expenses.
Thank you.
I do have some questions, but I'm mindful of the time, so I will email them to you. So it is here. However, I do have, based on Councillor Joyce's comments, that I'd like to put a recommendation to the committee, a proposal to the committee, and obviously see what the committee's views are on it. That we, as CLAC, decide to create an informal working group to discuss the King's Lynn special expenses, to essentially identify savings or where items should not be in King's Lynn special expenses budget. Obviously, that phrase couldn't be smartened up. So what's the members' views on this one? Obviously, that was Councillor Joyce's proposal, in so to speak. Councillor Bone?
I second Councillor Joyce's proposal with the amendment that Councillor Joyce is actually an active part of that task group as well. Yeah, it seems from our discussion that there is certain areas that we can contribute and have knowledge where where efficiencies can be made, and Councillor Joyce has put forward some probably good suggestions tonight. So I second the motion. Don't know how I'm going to fit it into my busy schedule, but probably will look forward to Councillor Joyce on this.
Councillor Joyce, do you want to be named as the proposer of that, or?
I'm easy either way. I mean, I'm quite prepared to put my head on the block. But yeah, I'm quite happy to do it.
It was your proposal, so.
Just what you said, Mr. Chairman. I'm quite happy for that. To go ahead. And I'll start work on it tomorrow. How's that?
Okay, any other members want to comment?
Sorry. Do you all agree to establish the informal working group? Just show of hands, please. Yeah, thank you. And then it's down to you who decide the membership of the informal working group as well. We can take names now, whoever wants to put forward. Obviously, there is a couple of members that aren't present, so if you were happy, then I will email them separately to see if they want to be a part of it as well. And then next meeting, we'll look at terms of reference for the informal working group.
How many, Councillor Joyce?
Haven't laid the trap for myself. I suppose I better walk into it.
So how many, but thank you, Councillor Collop. I was about to say, how many members would you suggest be on it? Because we don't want too many, because it will turn into to quote Charles Joyce, a planning meeting, end quote. So I don't know, I've deferred to Democratic Services again.
As a committee, you've got 14 members for CLAC, so you can have 5, 7, 9 if you'd really like, but it's entirely up to you. I would be mindful not to have every member of CLAC on the informal working group.
Councillor Bone?
I suggest you have we agree upon a certain number of committee members being part of that, but have that interchangeable with if certain members of CLAC can actually bring something specific to a certain area that's being looked at. There'll be some of us who's more number minded. There'll be people that might have contacts all around events and that, so it should to make it be as effective and efficient as possible, fewer members at an actual meeting, but allow it to be open to members that have specific knowledge in certain areas.
So certain number of members rotating, or whoever wants to. So
Okay.
Sorry, can I make a suggestion? You have a certain amount of number of members that attend as the membership, and then you invite, like you said, members that are better with certain areas.
Councillor Hennigan?
I don't have a strong feeling on the numbers, but I'm assuming that the working group will report back to us before any decisions are made. Yeah. Okay. In that case, I look forward to receiving those reports, and I shall not be volunteering.
I think
Oh,
Hello again. I seem to have created some work. Just mindful that, you know, we're taking something around setting up a town council. So I'm saying this work is appropriate because once, whether you set up a town council or not, this needs to be looked at. That's fine. I do want to reassure you that there's no smoke and mirrors with these numbers. It is scientifically produced. My team will go off and do the background work and provide the data to your subcommittee, subpanel. And that, just to give you that context, really. So, and then that's where you'll be able to challenge, reassure, and offer up your views and ideas and opportunities. So that's how I would see it working going forwards. But I just wanted to mention that there's also going to be another piece of work around creation of a town committee. So, and that could supersede, it could run in tandem with this. So I don't know whether it's worth, to get us through this evening on the proposal, to just suggest that the chair of the committee liaises with the monitoring officer and gets an understanding of the timeline around the town council, and then we're not over demanding upon your time and services. And regardless, you know, my team will do their best to commence this piece of work, but it won't be any output from that in this current calendar year. I'm looking into the new calendar year. So I just wanted to give you that context and perhaps suggest that maybe we just take it away to the monitoring officer for you to understand what the demands on this committee might be as part of the town council proposal.
I was thinking that the working group would then be absorbed by that new town council, but obviously if they, yeah, I have to see what the monitoring officer says on that one. Cool. Right, okay, bear with me one moment. Okay, so on the item 8, the recommendation as written was previously that this committee endorses as proposed special expense charge for 2026-2027 set out as section 2.2 of the report. Obviously, now that we've looking into the informal working group to essentially look at the figures, is CLAC minded to endorse them, or do we want Councillor Joyce? Thank you.
I think your hands are tied on this one. You know, whatever the working group comes up with, it's going to be very difficult to get it enacted in time for January and February of next year. So this is one just, what was it she said? We'll just have to suck it up, or whatever the word was, phrase she used. So I think our hands are tied, to be honest. So yeah, we do have to support. Well, I think we have to support what Carla said.
When is the deadline for budget stuff? January, I'm assuming.
Deadlines, I love them. Yeah, we are having to do extensive consulting with party leaders, of which some of this panel will be aware. So that consultation process needs to be well underway
Right.
in December. So we're literally down to our last few weeks of getting the Borough Council's budget drafted. That gives genuine consultation opportunities. So our people around this table and around the council have that opportunity to make genuine impact on that draft budget. So it is quite soon.
Yeah, thank you. I think Councillor Joyce is right there. Our hands are tied this year. So shall we, based on what we've discussed, shall we have a show of hands that the committee endorses the proposed special expense charge for 26-27 as set out section 2.2 of the report? Right, thank you for that, and thank you very much, Carl, for that. Right, so moving swiftly on to parish partnership scheme bids. Mark, please.
Thank you, Chair. So this paper is to bring to committee's attention the bids that have been drafted for this year's parish partnership, of which there is one, and for you to consider whether you want to approve that subject to budget availability, which you do have. I don't know, Councillor Jones, if you want to talk to your submission.
Yep, so I've put in a bid for a SAM-free camera to be moved around in various places where we know there's a lot of speeding going on in North Lynn. I've liaised with everyone, the figures are there, so support me or die. SAM is a speed awareness, what's the M? I can't remember. Yeah, monitoring system for what speed drivers are doing. We've obviously got Green Park Academy coming out onto Columbia Way, and that's one of the areas where we'd like to place it, but it has to be moved every so many weeks.
Councillor Caldwell.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'd like to support the proposal, and in particular, we've had some good results in Gaywood where we've been able to have these types of speed reduction cameras or similar, and I think it's absolutely right that we as a committee should be trying to support these. I did have just one question, and it was in relation to the sighting, the proposed sighting. I note that it's in an area which is of a that junction is a raised junction, and I just I'm talking that the road is
table.
Yeah, raised table. So I'm just wondering, is that the exact right place for it if cars are slowing down potentially in any event? And I just wondered what the highways engineers had indicated in relation to that point.
They've indicated no issues with where I've placed them, because they're where you're talking about the raised bits, they're quite away from that junction.
I've got Councillor Bone and then Councillor Sayers and Councillor Hennigan. Thank you.
I too fully support Councillor Jones' application for this. I was brought up on Columbia Way many years ago, and my sister was actually knocked down by a speeding car just slightly further up the road, and the need wasn't great because we didn't have a school situated there. And I also support the match funding that FLAC will have to do to get this put through. Obviously, Councillor Bambridge has said that she will provide some funding, but she has raised issues with regards to the actual replacement of batteries. I don't doubt it, to be fair. I bet Councillor Jones has already got a team to act that. And I was just curious, would the school itself be involved in the task of like changing the batteries to do the task?
One of the members is a governor of the school.
Councillor Sayers, please.
Councillor Bone covered my point quite concisely. So thank you very much, Councillor Bone.
Councillor Hennigan.
Of course, I'll be supporting this. Ben, Councillor Jones, as always, sort of understanding the needs in his ward and responding to them. So thank you for that. I assume that you say it's mobile. I don't really understand how mobile. I mean, can it be sort of moved around? And also, I just wanted to comment further before you get back to me. It's just when I went out with you doing the RISE project and talking to residents, speeding was one of the things that was brought up quite regularly on the doorstep. So I'm really pleased to see that something positive is being done about this.
Yeah, it's portable. We just fix it to a lamppost. I've indicated some to Martin Rose, who's going to be who's the highways engineer. I've located places on maps. So Rivers Way, which was one of those places we covered, is an area we'll be looking at as well.
Anybody else want to comment on this? Yeah, I'm always for that, because say anything to reduce speed, that's saying speed kills, but so anything to reduce the speed. And obviously we know that some children may not have their focus 100% on the road when they're coming out of school. So yeah, anything we can do to reduce that. So I'm fully on support with that as well. So we are requested to consider for approval, subject to budget availability, the costed scheme, which was 4,753, and two, for approved schemes that the sponsoring council submits this bid to Norfolk County Council. Are we all agreed on that one? Agreed. Any against? Cool. Okay, so Mark again for the CLAC support officer. Thank you.
Me again. Yeah, and I think probably some of the conversations about wanting to revisit special expenses might highlight how this item can help the committee in their desire to quite rightly understand the spend, and also to support around applications into parish partnership schemes and other schemes that might come available, because it is as I think those members that have put those bids forward in the past, it's not necessarily the easiest thing to do, is it? And currently we don't have officer resource to assist you with that. So you have from the same budget that you are able to approve these parish partnership schemes, there is sufficient funding there to appoint a CLAC support officer for a period of 2 years. That post has been written and graded already. So if members are happy, we could go out to advert on that fairly quickly. Whether we'd do it this side of Christmas, I'm not sure. It depends in terms of whether it might be better to wait. But so as I said, there isn't enough support currently within the authority to enable you to prepare draft priorities, coordinate projects, identify funding opportunities, and prepare business cases. It's just not there. So the idea is that we have somebody 2 days a week to assist you with that work, and to assist you in terms of your terms and your terms of reference. The functions of CLAC set out at paragraph 4 are basically around your special expenses, around your spend. I'll skip over 4.3, which talks about surplus funding from special expenses. But obviously 4.5, monitoring expenditure against Kings Lynn special expenses, which we've just had a long conversation about, and also to support members in their ambitions for their areas, prioritise funding decisions, and bring a more comprehensive package to committee, I guess, to enable you to make fully decisions that are based on a lot more information than might currently come to you. So that is the proposal. I will stop talking and be happy to take some questions.
Councillor Joyce?
Yes, thank you. Few questions, Mark. Is the hour, or are the hours flexible? Because because it could be that someone cannot walk 14.8 hours a week, but they can work 16 hours a week because there are other effects on their income. The other thing is it internal applications or will they be external applications? And whatever the applications are, will someone, maybe two people, don't look at me, it's not going to be me, but will someone from this committee be on the interview panel if interviews are necessary? I mean, I have someone in mind, but I doubt if she'd do it because she's probably more senior than this position. I'd take her with both hands, no question about it. She's absolutely brilliant. But you know, basically, it goes a little bit deeper in what you're saying. I actually think it's a really good idea. I think the council should have 2 or 3 of these people, you know, because I just look upon them as someone to go out and get some money. And I would always support that, so long as they bring back more than they cost.
So we've costed it at 2 days a week, rather than, I mean, 16 hours is 2 days and 1.2 hours a week, I guess, in terms of the working hours of the council in terms of our core times. So, I mean, I guess that's up to committee to decide whether they think that's a sufficient number of hours in the first instance. I think it probably is, but fundamentally, if it felt like there was more work there for the support officer to do.
No one will know until the applications come in. True. And the interviews are taken, whether it needs to be more hours. Understand you've worked it out, and all being equal, you'll be correct. But there may be someone who comes in who, oh, Francis, what's the polite word? Caring responsibilities, who would just like that extra hour and a bit to, you know, aid him or her.
I mean, I think what I'd say to you is that it's CLAC's choice. At the end of the day, it's your budget, it's your money. You know, officer opinion is that 14.8 is probably a reasonable amount. If you think that you need more than that, it's coming out of your budget at the end of the day. So CLAC's choice. In terms of who would be on the interview panel, I would be surprised if members would be involved in an interview for a post of that nature. I will take that away and discuss with HR colleagues.
As you say, it is this committee's money, and who pays the piper calls the tune. And certainly it's not going to be me, so I'm not pushing for myself. Someone from this committee should be on there, whether it's the chairman, the vice chairman, David, Francis, or whoever.
Yeah, your point is noted, and I will take it under advisement.
Thank you, Councillor Joyce. So we've got Councillor Hennigan next, please. No.
As you've given me the floor, I'll take it.
You didn't want to speak then?
Well, I did, but I hadn't got around. I didn't think I'd put my hand up yet, but anyway.
Yeah. Go ahead, sorry.
I might have done. Yeah, I mean, I'm supportive of this. If this makes CLAC more effective, I think that's certainly a great idea. And I do actually agree with Councillor Joyce that if it would be quite nice to have input from this committee on this selection of the candidate as well.
Councillor Bone next, please.
Thank you, Chair. My imagining of this role would be that majority of the time the actual the support officer wouldn't actually be that busy, and then there'll be other times with regards to when closing applications where they're going to be absolutely inundated. Having gone through the process myself as last year, it was extremely difficult to put parish partnership to chase everyone and to get everyone to come back to you at the time. It just felt like it was looming down to the deadline. I wasn't going to get it. And to be fair, I actually got more than what I actually required, but it's probably going to make me really unpopular in my ward. I actually requested 10 bollards and got 38. So yeah, I think it's a really valid role just to help you keep up with the deadlines. It was difficult working and trying to chase everything. So I think it's beneficial, and obviously over an average period of 48 hours a week, it probably is a realistic amount of time, bearing in mind that the officer probably at certain times of the year will be quite bit like how our ward work comes in. You can go like a month where you don't get nothing, and then the whole ward wants to be in contact and want you to do things all at the same time. So I should imagine the support officers' work would be very similar to that, and probably if it's worked out on an average, that probably works out, in my opinion, about right. But would there be the flexibility to allow that type of work, or would the contract be like 2 days a week and you've just got to come into the office on those 2 days? Because it also might make it a bit more challenging for certain members to meet with that officer in that time frame as well.
I mean, so we have some policies around flexible working and what staff can do, and clearly we have situations where either pressures and demands require that you might work different days or different hours, and I'm sure that we can be flexible about that within our existing policies. In terms of the work of that individual, whoever they would be, I would like to think that we will keep them fully engaged for 52 weeks of the year for your money. There are other grant-funded opportunities out there that we've not had the chance to explore in detail that could really help CLAC achieve its aims and ambitions about what it wants to do for King's Lynn, which it can't pick up any other way. And that those processes can be quite significant anyway, just in terms of going out and finding that funding that might be able to support you.
Thank you. Councillor Fry on Teams, please.
Thank you. Two things. Firstly, the budget, is that out of that 718 we've just said, or is that a different budget?
No, that's the 700 is the special expenses. This budget is a pot of money that was given to CLAC a couple of years ago, I think now, in order to help you when you became a consultative, when you stopped being a consultative committee and became a decision-making body in your own right. Approximately £66,000, I think it was, somewhere around there, was provided to assist in that work, and that's the budget that this post would be funded out of.
So, sorry, then follow up on that. Is that then a short-term post until that funding is available? So
the post is for 2 years initially, and then obviously we'd need to review it, but local government reorganisation, King's Lynn Town Council, etc., I suspect that will probably, if there's a need to renew it past that 2-year period, then clearly we'd look at that.
Okay, thank you. Then the other thing I just want to raise is, I'm sorry, but I'm going to go totally against Councillor Joyce and the other lady that said that we should be involved in any interviews. The person would be a member of staff by the council, and it should be up to them to formally undertake the interview. It shouldn't be anything to do with us.
I'll reserve comment on that until I get the comment back from Mark on that one, Kurt. So I have my own views on whether, as it's our budget, our money, whether it should be, we should be on the panel. I've got Councillor Bone and Councillor Bone.
Thank you. Obviously, on consideration of 66,000, and if we haven't spent some of that already, would go. In reality, we're probably agreeing to that £66,000, and probably it might even need topping up to be this person's salary. I over 2.5 years,
Yeah, so section 5 of the report suggests that that it will cost you approximately £16,000 a year. Depends what the salary is.
That's fine. Yeah. Okay, yeah, no, that's fine. I would support it anyway because the person who here would have potentially generated more money than what they cost. So
Might even find some money to sponsor. Or to
get some dog waste
dog bins. Yes. On that subject, just
Thank you, Councillor.
Dersingham,
That'll be worth the weight in gold.
in Dersingham, the local vet has advertising, so I don't know. That's something we could look into.
Advertising on dog waste bins. Interesting. It is a radical idea. You don't see it, do you? So yeah, Councillor Hannigan, I was told my advice once you want to speak again.
I'm sure nobody can answer this question now, but I'm just putting it out there. I mean, I'm assuming, and I think it's really what you were trying to say, Councillor Bone, is that we could might need some flexibility in the hours. So, I mean, at the minute, we don't really know we've got an idea of what the job entails, but we don't, until it's done, we probably don't know exactly how many hours are going to be required. And so it gets busier at other times. So there would be some flexibility, and we do have the money in the budget to increase the hours if necessary.
Right, thank you for that, Councillor Hannigan. Anyone else wishing to speak? Okay, so we move swiftly on to item 11, which is... Oh, no, I'm jumping ahead yet again. So committee are requested to approve the creation of a CLAC support officer, the post to be for an initial 2-year period for 14.8 hours per week. All agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Now we can jump to item 11. So committee's work programme. So at the moment, with the exception of the informal working group, terms of reference and numbers, etc., we have no items scheduled for our January meetings. So does anybody? Oh, yeah.
I'm not sure who mentioned it. Was it you, David, about the bus shelter? That really does need a concerted approach. The police are not going to do it on their own. Borough Council are not going to do it on their own. The County Council are not going to do it on their own. Even the Town Council is not going to do it on its own. So perhaps we could have on the agenda a way forward for
Joint.
Yeah.
Collaboration.
A collaboration. I mean, I'll just give you one example. There's an empty office on the bus shelter. I don't let the superintendent hear this, but there's an empty office on the bus shelter. Microwave, kettle. You have an office for the police to just come in and have a cup of tea, and they'll park their car outside. And so rather than patrols once every 2 or 3 hours, there'll be a squad car turn up, ad hoc throughout the day and throughout the night. And it's actually the police presence that will be a big deterrence to those who may not mean any harm, but are just a nuisance at times. And it also gives the older person coming in from the villages a little bit of reassurance when they see the squad car there when they get off the bus. That is, and of course the Borough Council can do their bit and clean up the bus shelter, this type of thing. But as you say, David, a collaborative approach to try and find, we've got to be careful about this, a solution to the problems that seem unsolvable at the bus station. The combined efforts of the Borough Council, the County Council and the police should be able to sort that out in a relatively small space of time. But that office sits there and it's not doing anything. So why not utilise it? I mean, the lads who go around sweeping the streets in the town centre, they could even use it. But you know, it's actually the squad car that actually does it, and you see this policeman or this policewoman coming out. What they doing here? They're here again. They're a nuisance. So those who are causing the problem will simply drift away somewhere else.
Councillor Hannigan.
Well, that's partly what I was going to raise as well, but I was going to extend it a little bit. I do think maybe we need to be looking at antisocial behaviour generally, because I mean there are quite a number of hotspots around. Fran and I get it quite a lot in our ward, being the town centre ward, so we do hear about it. And it doesn't really seem to be a solvable problem at the moment. You sort out a problem in one area and it pops up in another area. So you may sort out the bus station, but you're moving the problem somewhere else. So there needs to be sort of a concerted action on this, and I just think it would be quite nice if we could sort of work with our partner agencies to try and address this and see if we can find solutions. I mean, I believe Councillor Everett, didn't you put forward a proposal last year for CSAS approved officers? I mean, we should be considering something along those lines in order to support the police, because the police do an incredibly good job in our area. We're very lucky with our police force, but they can't be everywhere all the time. So it would be quite nice if we had that. And the additional item I was looking at, because we are talking about the forward work programme rather than just that, accessible playground. I'm not sure what's happened to that. That seemed to drop off the agenda somewhere along the line. I don't know what's happening, because I thought it had been approved for the walks a long time ago, and I haven't don't know if Councillor Bones got any information on that.
And just come back on the antisocial behaviour, turn off free Wi-Fi in public areas.
Okay, coming back on the open spaces review, unfortunately, obviously with the thing, we missed a funding opportunity with here, and obviously this will probably be a benefit of actually having a dedicated officer to do that. I think in the rejuggle or people leaving last year just left it where the officer time we just missed the opportunity. So, but it is a real shame because it is a really important thing and is really widely supported. So, yeah, I think that would be quite apt to come on the January support thing with hopefully some solutions, because it would be better to, but it wasn't a simple case of just buying the equipment. The investigations were looked into, and then you actually needed to provide the services, and there was a lot more work involved in what was originally thing, but progression from that, I don't know where it any further.
If I may, it was about making it truly inclusive. The scheme that was devised and approved and received funding following further advice and some work that Councillor Rust and Martin Chisholm did, basically demonstrated that what we wanted to do wasn't really inclusive. It was accessible but not inclusive, because it was putting all the accessible equipment in one part of a play area rather than integrating it into a play area, which is best advice. That made the scheme as it was not viable, and what we want to do required a lot more capital to do. So the decision reluctantly was to come out of that, to withdraw from that scheme. There's nothing to stop us bidding back into it again at a later stage. But again, yes, absolutely something that the support officer could look at, because we just haven't had the resource to go away and do the work around that in the interim. But it hadn't dropped off my radar. It was just something that we haven't had a chance to review, but I'm happy for it to come back forward.
So I've got Councillor Moore on Teams and Councillor Sayers next.
Hiya. I kind of know the answer from a policing perspective on this, because I know how overstretched the police are, But I wanted to kind of ask for some feedback from the rest of you about maybe some kind of campaign for this. So I don't think I've ever been in a town before where I've seen so many people, mostly young, but adults as well, that just ride around Kings Lynn on bike with no lights at all anywhere. It just seems to be, they ride along the road, through the park, at the walk, just absolutely everywhere. And it seems like having lights has gone out of fashion now. It used to be something that you got stopped for immediately back in the day by the police. So what I was saying is, I guess I understand that the police is massively overstretched with this, and that's probably a problem. But is there anything we could look at for a kind of program of education, either with some of the adults in schools, or just something to kind of like wake people up again on this one, as how important it is?
I can answer that if you
Brilliant.
want. I have actually, I mean, I speak to the police about this issue quite a lot. We have raised it with them. Bike lights is a serious problem. The lack of bike lights. I mean, I know yourself, I mean, I have to walk through the walks almost every day in the dark evenings. You've got bikes flying out at you left, right and centre, and they don't have lights on.
Deadly.
They can't see you, you can't see them. They're dangerous on the roads, and it is a major issue. I have been talking to the police. I know that the police, I mean, we've raised it at our SNAP meetings quite often as well. I think it comes up at nearly every SNAP meeting. They do go out there. More work does need to be done on that, and greater awareness of road safety needs to be done. But there is certainly work going on. I know the police have been out doing quite a coordinated effort this in the last week, pulling up cyclists who don't have lights on. But yes, we need to. Was there a second point that you wanted to raised?
Just if there was something maybe that we could do as a kind of a campaign awareness ourselves in some way, either into the school. I just don't know whether the schools do this like they used to.
Yeah. Sorry, actually, that was the second point about the schools. I do believe that the police are looking to go into the schools and start looking at pupils. They did speak to me about that a few weeks ago, so I just need to follow up with them on that. So there is that. And I do think it's also a county council issue as well. Sort of road safety, I think, does come under that, but it doesn't mean to say that we shouldn't be raising awareness with it at borough level as well.
Thank you.
Councillor Sayers.
Thank you, Chair, or Deputy Chair. So my point was to follow up from Councillor Joyce about joined up thinking for partner agencies. When I was much younger, I was heavily involved in a church, and like yourself, Councillor Jones, there was outreaches, and I think we can ask partner agencies, be it the churches in the town centre, if they would be prepared to do outreaches mimicking what you've been doing in North Lynn. I think that's a great idea that we can ask and make a satellite of that in the town centre, where we're seeing antisocial behaviour, particularly around the youth, not having somewhere to congregate. And I'd heavily encourage us to explore that as something that we can either champion or push forward.
Thank you. Councillor Collett.
Thank you, Chair. Just going back to the CLAC support officer, will they be able to come to our meeting when we have them or not?
I would assume that if we need the officer to come and present to you, that they will come and present to you. Failing that, I will present on their behalf.
Right, thank you everyone for your participation. It's been quite a lively meeting this time. So the date of the next meeting is scheduled for Thursday the 15th of January at 5:15 in this very room. Thank you everyone, meeting closed.